Well, Chris, thanks a lot for taking a few minutes to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So you're a pretty well-known web blogger on CSS tricks. You've written a book about WordPress, or co-wrote a book about WordPress. For the few people that crawling out from under a rock who don't know who you are, maybe give us a brief introduction to who Chris Coyier is.
Yeah, that's a pretty good introduction. Anybody that already knows me, it's generally through that. It's through CSS tricks or digging into WordPress. I guess that's about it. That book was co-authored between me and Jeff Starr, so I try to always mention that because he does more work on it than I do. He's a super good WordPress developer as well. So that's about that. I also work for Wufoo, which is that online form builder. So that's my other thing where I spend my time.
And just kind of starting, I guess, with a WordPress interview where we should, what was the first version of WordPress you can remember working with? And maybe what brought you to WordPress as both a blogger and a designer?
Oh, wow. That's a super good question. I wish I could even remember. I bet it was 1 point something, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like super old school. I wasn't like here from the beginning. People love throwing that stuff out, though, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's so great. Even on my blog, they're like, I've been reading your blog since day one. I'm like, nobody read my blog since.
Yeah.
Anyway, it started, I was like working in print design, like totally not doing web anything, but I thought the web was cool. It's just that you can't, it's kind of hard to get a web job if you just have no experience in the web. And in our college experiences, like so few of us had it actually apply to anything relevant web wise. I mean, man, I got my degree in multimedia design and we didn't even touch HTML.
Wow.
We didn't even, not once. We just did like Flash and Macromedia Director and stuff like that. And so when I came out of there, I was like totally not confident in my ability to get a web job, and I didn't even try. I just went into print because I did have some experience there. So then I was like working at these print jobs, and I was like building websites on the side. And this is like still how I tell people how to get into learning about the web is to download WordPress, download a free theme, get yourself a domain name, put WordPress on it, put that theme that you thought was cool on it, and then start like hacking away at the theme. You can learn about HTML that way. You can learn about PHP that way. You can learn about CSS that way. If you want to mess around with JavaScript, you can learn. As long as you have that like working environment set up, man, that's my advice, man. That's how I got into it. That's how anybody can get into it.
There are a lot of content management systems anymore. What do you think it is about WordPress? Because I hear that a lot. People kind of get started with web development with WordPress. What do you think it is about WordPress itself that kind of draws people to it that way?
It makes it bigger. Well, I'd like to see some like super real numbers on that, because to like me and you who are like super into the WordPress community, it can feel like we're the big behemoth and everybody we know and talk to is into WordPress and whatever. But like, I've been at a convention before that was really heavily Joomla based, and there was some WordPress people there, but we were totally the minority. And I think if you looked at the numbers worldwide, you'd find that WordPress is absolutely the biggest one out there. I don't know what those margins are, but it's, they have their own little worlds too. And, it's certainly not a war. I mean, you didn't insinuate that or anything that. But I feel like if you're already super good at Joomla development and you like satisfy your clients working on Joomla sites, and you've never really run across any limitations, then do whatever, man. More power to you. I almost don't even want to try and convince you to come to WordPress because you're already killing it, man. You're already doing your job as a web worker, and there's a ton of overlap between those two things. There's contact form plugins for both of them. There's ways to publish posts and pages with both of them. So there's no, to argue about which one is better. It might be a little bit of a waste of our time, even though, of course, WordPress is better.
Fair enough. And maybe this would be a good segue for those that do want to get into it. Your book, or your co-authored book, Digging into WordPress, and it's at digwp.com.
That's right.
What would be what kind of WordPress people might be interested in reading your book?
Well, it's definitely not. I mean, no, there are like good for dummies versions of it, and there's like, there's the web too. So for one thing, that's some criticism that the book gets, or any tech book gets, is like, why would I buy this at all? All this information is available online anyway, and I'm like, yeah, it is, but some people are just book people. I am sometimes. I'm kind of both anyway.
Sure.
I prefer both, but it's okay. So it's not for dummies, It's not. We tried to start out by saying, okay, it's a beginner can learn from it, an intermediate person's going to get a lot out of it, and there's going to be good reminders for advanced people. But that's kind of a cheap way out of it. I think everybody buy it, please, please. But no, I guess if we had to pick, it's an intermediate level exploration of WordPress. So it would help if you've probably already installed WordPress somewhere. You already have some concept of what a theme is and stuff like that. So I think that would be best.
Gotcha. Now, what was it? The book was published last fall, winter.
Yeah, we was trying to think of it. I think it has not yet been 1 year, but it's really close.
Yeah. What was it that originally drove you and Jeff to co-write a book about WordPress?
It was, he just emailed me, and he's like, do you want to write a book about something? And it was not WordPress. It wasn't anything. It was just generic, And then we started, and I was like, yeah, just because I always wanted to try that. I've seen other people doing it, and just like out of jealousy, I was like, I want to do that. That sounds awesome. Not only that, it's 'cause now I know stuff about web. I have stuff to say about web, and I have a print background. So like, I'm kind of the perfect storm for getting a book done, So, and then we just decided that we both have blogs. His blog is Perishable Press, and I'm CSS Tricks, and we both talk about web related stuff. And sometimes we both talk about WordPress, but it's not really the main focus, or it's not maybe even super appropriate for those two blogs. And so we just decided, well, if we had maybe we could start, maybe it could be WordPress, because that would be our outlet, that would be appropriate for talking about WordPress. And it just kind of went from there. It took a really long time to write it. It's probably 2 years ago we started writing it. It took like a year to get out, just because, that's a long story, I guess, but it just takes a long time to write a book, And so that's the route we took.
How would you, let's say someone, and maybe you are already, propositioned you to write another book, how would you describe the book writing experience before, and is it something you would jump into again?
I've been like avoiding it. Like, oh man, it's so much work. It's just, the reason it's a lot of work is that every pixel on the page, every word, every screenshot, every caption really needs to be right and not embarrassing. Because if there's one little thing that starts to feel stale or is wrong or whatever, it has bad effects. It makes you look bad. It can lead somebody down a wrong path, whatever. So there's just a lot of after you've written it, and that's not an easy chore either, because it's a different type of writing than blogging is. There's stuff like, on my blog, I'm more than happy to write in first person, but on this blog, I can't. I think we avoided it because it's a 2-person book, and it's really, it would be weird to be first person. Be like, who's I in this case? Is it Jeff or Chris, or is it some ominous third person? So you got to be conscious of all that type of stuff, and then it goes through editing, and then you publish it, and then there's 100 people that found problems with it, and then it needs to be republished. And that's one of the advantages of doing the PDF thing like we did, is that you can just fix a PDF and send it out. It's a little bit like the web. Unlike with print, you're kind of stuck with what you get. So if somebody else was thinking about writing a book, it'd be like, just don't underestimate the amount of work that it takes. And I don't know. But, I mean, it's certainly been worth it. I mean, we've definitely sold enough copies that it has succeeded our dreams or whatever of how much money we'd hope it'd make, and how many people have written in to say that it had helped them and stuff like that. It was rewarding.
Awesome. You mentioned PDF and print versions. What were the responses to the kind of dual printing, and which was maybe more popular? Did you sell more PDFs than books, or vice versa?
No, it's still for sale, obviously. So
sure,
we sell a lot more PDFs. At the moment, that's all you can buy, because when we printed it, we'd printed like 200 copies, and then we printed like 300 copies, and on this print run, I think we're printing 400 copies. So the problem is that they sell out fairly quickly.
It's a good problem.
Yeah, it is, but it's also okay. So just a little bit of backstory on this is that
Sure.
we self-published it. It's not like through O'Reilly or anything like that. It's just we wrote it in Google Docs. Me and Jeff laid it out in InDesign. We just threw the files back and forth to each other in Dropbox and laid it out. My mom works in the printing industry still, and she printed it at her print shop. And then, my stepdad got involved helping us like bind the books and all this. So and then literally the final product is like this spiral bound book. And that was one of the cool things that we could do with self-publishing is spiral bind, which you can't do in traditional publishing because it won't go in bookstores,
Right.
So it's spiral bound. And then that's the final product. Then it needs to get boxed, and then you need to ship it out to the people who buy them. And shipping is just like no trivial thing, man. It's like orders come in, and you have to make a little label for them. And this was our process: is that I would make these labels as PDFs, send them back to my folks, who would print them out on label paper, pull off the labels, slap them on a box. You have to box the book then, and literally put them in the car and take them to the post office. And doing that for hundreds of books over a stretched out time frame is just a ton of work. So it's, if you sell your book through O'Reilly, you're like, oh, cool, the book is done. Good luck. And they just have their own people and structure for it, and you don't have to think about it. So, we wanted to keep those numbers low. I mean, if you had to do that, it could be your full-time job, and I just had no desire to make shipping my full-time job,
I would imagine, or I guess a good question for you would be, what was it like, and what is it like writing a book for a technical audience? I would imagine that developers of any sort, or web people, tend to be pretty critical and pretty aware of any mistakes. I mean, you mentioned the mistakes at one point in the writing process. I mean, how did that change and affect the process of writing the book?
They're critical. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, if there's a mistake in the book and they spot your mistake, they're the first people to tell you. But what if you were like Dan Brown and you're writing the Da Vinci Code? I mean, people are critical of that too, certainly. So I don't think I think any writer who puts things out there publicly is subject to pretty intense criticism, and it all, just like blogging or anything else, it's like there's trolls and they make you feel bad, and you need to have good boundaries to stop that from making you feel bad. So it's not that big of a deal. And a lot, when we even put a form out there, that said, if you find a mistake with the book, tell us what page, put it on the thing. We have a shared Gmail account. They get filtered right into a special folder for errata, and we make sure that all of those emails get dealt with in subsequent versions. And so we have, we listen to every single criticism of the book and try and accommodate where it makes sense. And if it's just an opinion or something, then it'll either, be accepted or not. But if it's just a typo or something, it'll certainly get fixed. So that was our process. And, like I didn't mention earlier, we started talking about book and PDF. And certainly even when both are available, we sell more PDFs just because it's so cheap. It's like a lot cheaper. And because of this whole homegrown process and my dad going to the post office to mail these things out, they started at about $70. It was like, this is not a cheap book. You don't buy this. And a lot of it was just people buying it to support me and Jeff, and just because they liked the project or liked our blogs for so long. We don't charge for the blog, stuff like that. So we have just kind of fans buying it, which is cool. But it's probably the most expensive WordPress book. So, if you got to actually want this thing. Anyway, so we sell a lot more PDFs. But one of the big sales pitches that we could do, and this ties into this, like errata and stuff, is that when you buy this book, whether you bought it as a PDF or a print copy, you get updates for it for the rest of your life, or the life of your email address, I guess, in our lives.
Right.
If we update the book, you get that PDF for free as it goes out. So that's the deal. And that's a sales pitch, because how many tech books do that? None. Why would I buy this tech book? It's going to go out of date in 3 months. It will.
Right.
And then I'm stuck. And you either got to buy a new version if the author even updates the book at all, or whatever. So this is, and people have liked that. And I don't think it's affected our sales. If a tech book doesn't, there was, like I don't know, if you wrote a book that was for WordPress 2.0 that's a bad example because my book is about WordPress. I don't know. The point is, people have appreciated it so far, and then I don't think it has affected our sales negatively. Like, when we send out an updated version, I don't want to hit up that person again. If you've already paid it once, I have a personal feeling. I don't have any sales stats that person would not buy it again. They'd be like, I've already bought that book. I don't want to be hit up again. So instead of that like negative feeling of them being like, oh, bummer, my book is outdated now, it's a positive feeling, and that, wow, I got the book update for free, and they're more likely to tell their friends and stuff, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when a new version comes out, we definitely see a spike in sales. So it's that's proof in the pudding, if you ask me.
So you worked on, really since 2 years ago, you're probably still working on the book here and there as new updates come out. After all these hours and all this time working with this book about WordPress, do you hate WordPress by now? Are you just sick of looking at this stuff all the time?
No, not at all. I feel a little guilty and sometimes in that, like just seeing WP Candy, man, and how active you are in the community and rocking out fresh news, like link after link during the day, and also, just good tutorial articles and all this stuff. I'm jealous that I don't feel as involved as I was a year and a half ago or a year ago or whatever. I was just like, neck deep in creating WordPress sites. And at the time I was at a design agency and we're using WordPress for all our sites. So like, I was just like in the thick of it a little more than I am now. So, we just got a book update out recently. So I'm still doing stuff. I'm just not as involved as I was, and ideas are a little lighter these days than they were at some time. We're still going to keep the book updated, keep the blog updated, and all this stuff. But I'm not sick of WordPress. I'm actually the other way around. I'm jealous. I wish I was working with it more.
You and Jeff, is this the first project you guys have worked on together, or are there other things in the past, or things you're working on now even?
No, I mean this is plenty, man. I'll tell you, Jeff's been awesome to work with, but yeah, this is the only thing that we kind of officially do together. But there's a lot to it because it's the book and it's the blog. So we're both writing articles for the blog, and it's the book just has a lot of behind the scenes stuff going on. There's accounting stuff that we work on together and all this stuff. So it definitely feels like a big undertaking that we do together. There's been talk of other things, but I'm not actively working on any new book or anything like that. I just moved down to Florida, and I'm in my new house here. This is the first video appearance of New House Land, I guess. And I don't want to do anything for a while. Nice. I want to just relax, and I'll do a little blogging and work and not do any crazy huge side projects for a little while.
So both blogging, your book, I would imagine you mentioned freelance work with WordPress. How important would you say WordPress as a software system and as a tool for your business has been important throughout your career thus far?
It's super important. I mean, I don't do any freelance. That's one thing I don't do is I have in the past, and I have a few like legacy clients, like friends and stuff, where I take care of their site and stuff. But I kind of actively avoid it because I just find it stressful. And I do too much other stuff to need to deal with I mean, geez, if I did freelance, I would want it to be the absolutely only thing that I did, so that I could really focus on them or whatever. But when I was at Chapman Design, which is the design agency I was at before I was at Wufoo, it was instrumental because one of the things I harp on is like this thing about instant productivity, which is like if I have 10 different sites, I can be a lot more productive on those 10 sites if they're all using the same technology like WordPress. I can jump from site to site to site. They all use jQuery, they all use WordPress. They have similar file structures because I wrote it. They have the same, like code indentation levels. I format my, CSS, put my images in the same kind of way. And it's to allow me to be instantly productive. And WordPress definitely facilitated that, being able to be like, oh, we need a new type of page. Well, I know just how to do that. I'll make a new template in our theme and use that new template for this new type of content or whatever. And so, I mean, it helped me tremendously.
Instant productivity, I remember reading about that on your blog. Is maybe what's the origin of that, and kind of what's the whole idea behind instant productivity?
I guess that's it. Is that while I was there, we had kind of a lot of clients and I was the only web guy. So there was probably, maybe 10 different sites we were in and out of quite a bit, and then other little projects we'd work on. But we were kind of the type of agency that had big main clients that was most of our work. And over my time there, I had converted them all into WordPress sites because out of my own need for sanity and making them all use a similar system. So then when I left finally, which was a good move, my successor, I could be like, look, I'm going to teach you a little bit about WordPress, and this little bit of knowledge that I'm passing down to you is going to be relevant to all of the different sites that you're going to be in and out of. So that worked out pretty well. But yeah, the idea of instant productivity came from my work there and came from so we have a new client walk through the door. They want some kind of site. Well, I've done lots of different types of sites, and I'm going to just assume that WordPress can handle them for now. And after I've really learned about them and what they need and stuff, maybe we can alter that decision on what technology to use, but probably WordPress is going to work because it's a CMS, and those are the type of clients that we serviced, and I can jump in and start building their site with that technology that I already know, and basically be instantly productive instead of being like, well, maybe I should try Drupal this week, and go through this 2-month learning curve of learning this whole new thing. We can do that as designers. We can be like, I've always wanted to try Fireworks, so I'm going to try Fireworks and spend a ton of time learning that thing. And I'm like, if you really want to be productive, maybe you should spend like some small percentage of your time exploring new stuff like that, but the majority of your time using tools that you already know how to use so you can just get stuff done,
Yeah,
that's my theory.
So you've been using WordPress a long time. What is it, either something new within WordPress that's come out with the latest version, or something that you see coming around the bend that has you excited?
About that's coming in the WordPress world?
Yeah, either new or that's been kind of previewed for the next point release.
Oh yeah, I haven't followed that super closely. I heard there's some new Ajax-y stuff coming in 3.1 maybe. I think like paginating through your lists of pages, having that be smoother. Instead of now you kind of have you have search, or you have just click through the numbers, and it's like they're both a little slowy.
Yeah.
Just because the whole admin has to. I really dig how WordPress spends his, time thinking about that type of stuff. There's development cycles put into features like that, and that stuff gets cut from point releases as much as stuff gets into them. So that there's constant iteration and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. What else? I mean, you tell me, man. What's coming in 3.1 that's exciting?
Let's see. Well, yeah, like you mentioned, some more Ajax stuff on the dashboard. There's some internal linking, which I don't know a ton about.
I did a post on that on DigWP at one time. Did just because short codes are really easy to write functions for, like those things between brackets in WordPress. And I was like, there should be a short code that's just like you just put in an ID. Right. In a short code, and it should just link to whatever that ID is, instead of you having to write it, hard code it, so that if your permalink style changes or whatever, this link will always be right. So that was what the post was. I don't remember what the link was, but yeah, that's what they're talking about, right? Is that you can just pick a page, and that link to that thing will always be right.
Yep.
Awesome.
And those are really the ones that stuck out to me. We've done some coverage on the site, but I mean, you know how it is. I can't remember everything.
Yeah. And then even now it's like, I remember somebody was whining about it on Twitter the other day. Like somebody did a blog post on what's coming in 3.1, and somebody from WordPress was like, dude, don't do that. It's still speculative at this point, know? Like it's not, I don't think they've settled on a feature set yet. So
yeah. We try to, rather than saying this is what's coming, because that's only going to disappoint people, because some of it, let's face it, some of it probably won't be there just because of how development works. We just tend to kind of review the developer chats and say this is what was talked about, this is
Right.
possible, but you never know. Well, I mean, anything else that you want to talk about or bring up before we kind of close up here? I mean, you're on Twitter. It's your name on Twitter. It's pretty easy. CSS
Yeah.
Tricks, digwp.com.
Right.
I forgetting anything?
I don't know. Check out Woofoo if you need forms, I guess.
Yeah, Woofoo's great.
Yeah.
How long have you been with them now?
Just like 4 months, so it's
Yeah.
fairly new, but we've done a ton of work since I've been there. We're just constantly doing new stuff. So, just because this is a WordPress podcast,
Sure.
there's no reason that you can't use Woofoo with WordPress. I mean, certainly I use Woofoo forms on every single one of my sites. So it's just, create the form in Woofoo, get the copy and paste code, chuck it in that WordPress code editor, and hit publish, man. And you're ready to go. So.
Oh yeah, I've been using Woofoo in some capacity or another for years. It's
Right
it's
on.
definitely the best out there for creating forms and kind of doing all sorts of crazy stuff that you don't want to do on your own.
Yeah, man, that's what it's all about. So, all right, thanks for having me, Ryan.
Hey, yeah,
Been
thanks a
real.
lot. I really appreciate your time.
Rocking it out on WP Candy, man. It's like the best WordPress blog out there right now.
Hey, next to DigWP, yeah.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, man.
Thanks a lot.